Sometimes we need quantity and not just quality. I'm Dr. Adam Millman. Thank you very much for watching. Recently, I had the wonderful opportunity to travel to Pasadena, California to see my wife's favorite band for the last 30 years, Oasis. We went to Pasadena and we sat in the Rose Bowl. It held 100,000 people. I haven't been to a concert like that since I saw Michael Jackson when I was in elementary school in Philadelphia. It's just unbelievable energy and passion and excitement of the entire crowd erupting when they came on stage for a full 2 hours. And just to be with my wife and to see her enjoy a band that she had been a fan of for 3 decades was a wonderful experience. But it was actually more than that, because it was the 5-hour drive to Los Angeles. It was the walk we took on the Sabbath, the following day on Saturday before the concert. And then on Sunday, we got to go to a bridal shower for one of my wife's close friends that she's been friends with for decades. And then we got to go to the concert. And then we got to stand in line waiting to take a shuttle for an hour and a half. And then we got to go to breakfast the next day. And then we drove home and it took 5 hours. And so it might seem like complaining the amount of time that I've thrown into the story, the driving back and forth and standing in line. But I have always been a big advocate, well, not always a big advocate, for the last few years, especially with my patients and congregants at our synagogue, the importance of spending time with your spouse. If I could write a prescription to my patients, I would write a prescription that they should go out with their wife at least once a week. And they say, well, I don't have the time. And I say, you do not have the time not to. And they say, well, we talk for 15, 20 minutes each night. And I say, and it's really intense and it's great. And I said, that is a good start. And that would meet the definition of what we call quality rather than quantity. People say it's quality, not quantity. And it is true that very intense interactions with your spouse, with your children, where you're really engaged with good eye contact, responding to what's being said, and you're engaged, and there's no social media and phones around to distract anybody, the television's not on, and that you can have very intense interactions that are very beneficial in short periods of time, but that is not enough time to discuss all the important issues, all the concerns, all the fears, all the desires, all the hopes that couples need to discuss in order to have a fruitful relationship. So we say quality, not quantity, and I agree that's true. But there comes a time where you must get away on a romantic adventure, or going out for 45 minutes because the babysitter needs to be home by a certain time just isn't enough. And that you have to schedule the time, and you have to do these things even if you feel that you can't, because you really can't. If people say, I can't afford to do it, you can't afford not to do it. If you want to maintain a happy relationship with your kids or with your spouse, you have to put that time in. And no matter how intense the conversation is for 20 minutes, there's no way that could possibly replace a romantic weekend away with your wife, going to a concert, going out to breakfast, putting your phone in the car while you're out, and just engaging with each other, just driving in the car. I remember when we were very poor, we just would drive around in the car a few years ago, and during the coronavirus and everything was closed, we'd just drive around in the car and just have that time to talk and not feel like you're pressured, because you got to get home and you got to get the lunches ready and you got to get the backpacks ready and you got to do this and got to do that, and it is all these things. That would be an example of what Jim Rohn calls majoring in minor things, And what Dr. Stephen Covey used to say, that you're stuck in the thick of thin things, where you're prioritizing your schedule rather than scheduling your priorities. Scheduling your priorities versus prioritizing your schedule, where you have 30 things listed on your schedule and then you're not even sure what order to put it in, rather than saying, what is the most important thing to me, consistent with my values, with my principles, the Almighty perhaps, then your relationship with your wife. Very, very close is your children. The religious community you might be involved in, or social foundation, something that you're involved in, church, these things, how you rank them, and then rank the things that you need to do based on what is most important to you. So if you want to have a good relationship with your wife, then you must schedule time every single week to be with them. You must schedule the time to be with your kids. Don't say that you will do it when you have the time, because maybe you will never have the time. When you schedule 30 things that you need to get done, then often the important things wind up not getting done. You say, well, I'll do them when I have the time, and then you don't have the time. Dr. Stephen Covey did this wonderful exercise. I saw it from the 80s, where he had a young lady get up on the stage and he had a bunch of rocks and he had a fish tank and he had a bunch of smaller rocks. and he poured the small rocks into the empty fish tank, and then he had a big rock. One of them said church, one of them said relationship, one of them said big opportunity at work, another one said leisure time. And then she tried to stuff in, after the small rocks were poured into the fish tank, tried to put the bigger rocks, the relationship with the family, church, community, vacation, time to yourself, tried to put them in, but they didn't fit because all the small rocks are in there. All the small rocks represent the things that are really not that important. So then he takes out all the small rocks, takes out the big rocks, and then you put the big rocks in the empty fish tank first, and then you put in all the small rocks. And guess what? If they don't fit, it doesn't really matter because most of those things symbolize things that are not really that important. But you have to schedule the things that are most important, consistent with your values and principles, so they get done first. If there's someone coming to town and you haven't seen them in a long time, that has to be the highest priority if that's consistent with your values. Not like, well, we'll see each other if we have time, and maybe I'll be able to pick you up at the airport and let's see what happens. Let's take it day by day and let's just see how it goes, because then it doesn't happen. So if you want to have a happy life, if you want to have good relationships with your family and your friends, specifically with your spouse, then you have to make time for these things. Schedule your priorities rather than prioritizing your schedule. Do not get stuck in the thick of thin things, and do not major in minor things. You can easily fall into a cycle or fall into a pattern of just doing the things on a day-by-day basis as they come up and not planning in advance, and then the important things just go by the wayside and they never happen. So it's important to spend quality time with family, for sure, but sometimes it is quantity as well. So 2 messages: make sure you schedule the things that are most important, and then the second message is give those things the time that they need. An hour date may not be enough, especially if those issues are coming up. Better to slay the dragon, as Dr. Jordan Peterson would say, early. Slay the snake when it's young and small, when you can still fight and win, before it grows into a dragon that there's no way that you're able to defeat. And the snake symbolizes a small problem that if you don't address it, eventually will become a very big problem. So sometimes it may be uncomfortable. You don't want to sit on the couch and you want to eat ice cream and watch television. You just want to zone out. But if you do that over and over and over again, every night, and you don't address the important things, your relationship will explode and you will be in hell. And then you'll really be in hell when you're in divorce court. And then you'll be in an even greater hell when now you're paying all this money for the divorce court and the settlement, and then your spouse has got a new significant other and you're paying money so that new significant other can raise your kids, and it is a major disaster. So give the relationships, the things that matter, the time they need. Schedule those important things, make them the first priority, and then they happen every time. Unless something disastrous comes up, someone has to be rushed to the emergency room, then that actually becomes a higher priority, and that's actually consistent with your values. But do not let some minor things pop up and torpedo your relationship, and spend the time that's necessary. Go for the long drives, do the weekend vacations. It doesn't have to cost a lot of money, but sometimes it is quantity rather than quality. Quality is important, but quantity is important too. Schedule the things that matter most, give them the time that they deserve, and you'll lead a very happy life. So again, what a wonderful experience to be able to go with my wife and spend the time necessary. The intensity was there, but also just the time so we could address things in a relaxed way and it wasn't rushed and we could really think about things. That's the way you have to do it. And that'll lead to a much higher quality life where you're not nervous about what's going to come up because you haven't discussed things. You know your wife or your husband needs to talk to you, but you haven't given it the time because you never want to do it because it's difficult, it's painful, and you don't want to see your spouse cry, but you know that's going to happen. You got to take the time to do it. Schedule the priorities. Do not get stuck in the thick of thin things. I remember Dr. Stephen Covey also says, have you ever been so busy driving that you didn't have time to stop and get gas? He also says that he came with the story about a guy walking through the woods, and you come across a wood chopper or a wood saw. It's a couple different stories. And the guy's exhausted, and you go up to him and say, what are you so exhausted for? And he said, well, I've been here chopping down this tree all day. And the guy says, well, why don't you take a break and sharpen the axe? And the response of the woodcutter says, well, I don't have time. I got to cut down the tree. And the person that's too busy to stop and get gas will run out of gas. Have you ever been so busy that you're so busy driving that you didn't take the time to stop and get gas, to do the things that are necessary in order to keep yourself healthy and with vitality? You need to put the time in. Sometimes you got to take a step back and say, what do I need to do to build the foundation to keep it strong? Conversation with your spouse, physical fitness, enough sleep, good nutrition. This is stopping to get gas when you need to get gas so you don't run out of gas. This is sharpening the axe or sharpening the saw so you can get down the tree, not just chopping. Sometimes you have to step back and you have to do the things that are necessary so you can be more productive. Thank you very much for watching.